Hi, everybody. For you new people who are just joining and don't know who I am Connie, and the channel is Gliding Through Blindness. And welcome. I just could not wait any longer to get this video out there because a lot of the stuff that's happening is super time sensitive, and I wanted to let you know about it right away. Um, and it's going to be all about what is happening in the world of AI right now, which is pretty exciting. And I have a playlist where I put the videos that I make on AI, so you can check that out to bring yourself up to speed as to what's going on, if you haven't already been watching. And in fact, all of my videos I end up putting in different playlists so that it's easier for people to find the ones that they want according to the topics they're most interested in. So, yeah, you might want to check out the various playlists on my channel for more info on that. The recent video I did just yesterday, in fact, was all about the one of the newest features on the Meta glasses, which is the live translate feature, which is pretty incredible to just think about how lucky we are to be alive in this time where we can just talk to somebody who does not know our language and have a conversation with them in real time, and the glasses just interpret in your ear what is being said or on your phone. And so you don't even have to learn a new language anymore in order to communicate with anyone in any language. I mean, right now it's not every language, but I mean, there's already apps out there in the wild that pretty much do that for any language, so it's just wild to think about. um and I demoed this feature so you can see for yourself and hear all about it and everything. So be sure to check out that vid if you haven't already. Um, but I have been taking notes for months in preparation for this AI video. I had no idea that it was going to be this long before I put out another one, because so much is always happening. But other things just kept getting in the way, and and then a lot of it becomes outdated almost as quickly as the news comes out because it's surpassed by other the latest and greatest. So then I kind of have to delete my notes and make adjustments and try to prioritize just the things that I think are most vital for you to know about. But I would encourage you, if you want to be updated in the world of AI more regularly, um, check out Wes Roth's channel on YouTube and Matthew Berman. They both put out several episodes per week to keep you in the know as to the most important things that are most relevant for us to be aware of. Um, so those are my two favorites. And so it's way too much for me to keep you updated on regularly. But one of the highlights I wanted to bring to your attention was just last month, which seems like ages ago now because so much has happened since then. But Notebook LM came out with their latest version. Um, and I was gonna show you some of this in real time, like because some like Wes Roth demoed it. I think it's day 7 of his live video that he did for the 12 days of Christmas. If you guys want to go and check that out to see this actually happening in real time, um, where he shows you this incredible model, you can just but also let me know if you want me to cover it in a future video too. And if this video gets enough views that I think enough people would be interested in it, um, I can definitely do these kind of topics more often, but I want to talk about what you guys want to hear. So you have to let me know. Um, but with this Notebook LM, you can plug in a complex math problem or an article or just whatever, and it makes a podcast about that. Within just a minute or two, it generates a podcast with AI people that have real human voices talking about whatever you plugged in and summarizing it in interesting and engaging format that I mean, you would not know the difference that it's not a real podcast that you just found on YouTube, except it's just generated on the fly. And what's even more incredible is that you can like interrupt it. They now have this interactive feature um, where you can interrupt the podcast and ask them questions about it. It's pretty crazy. I mean, I can't really do it justice just telling you about it here. But like, it's just like kind of like a call-in show. Like they'll say, "Oh, it looks like we have a listener that wants to ask a question. Go ahead," and then you ask your question in just right then, and then they answer it. They say, "Oh yeah, thanks for bringing that up. In fact," and then they'll just give you the answer. Um, and then they'll just go on with the podcast to what they were going to say, and then they'll, if you ask it something else or whatever, they will address it right then in the moment. So yeah, I let me know if you want to know more about that, and want to demo or whatever. And then these recent AI models that they're coming up with now are called reasoning models, where they are able to show their thinking processes along the way, which some people have different names because they don't like to use like these human terms like thinking. So they say, well, it's really just multiple prompts that it's automatically generating to that it goes through. And the longer time you give it, the more accurate answers it will give you. Um, and it will show you along the way the thinking process and how it reached its final conclusion. And it's kind of cool. Like sometimes it will even change its mind as it's thinking through these whatever you challenge you've given it. Like it'll say, "Oh, but wait, if I do this, maybe that would even be a better." You can see it thinking through all this stuff and how it's finally coming to its conclusion that it does. Um, and so I'll be talking more about that in a second. But you can also, and this has been known for a while already, but it's become especially relevant to me lately because my sister has been using this. She's been using Chat GPT for like therapy. It's like her therapist. And she actually, before she started using it, she did a session with a live counselor. But she is actually finding more value with GPT because you can ask it questions on the fly whenever you want. You don't have to wait for your scheduled therapy session. And not to mention, it's free. Um, and you can just ask it any time of the day or night, any question, and talk to it as long as you want. There's no time limits for it or anything. Um, and so she's just been learning all kinds of things about, well, I can do a whole nother video on that, because I have notes written on that whole aspect too, like just I statements instead of like just different ways of communicating, like with different people that resonates more with them. And um, yeah, so that's just another thing that is so where it will just meet you where you're at in the moment and give you actually real helpful advice that you can apply. Um, and what else has been happening? There's just been this operator model recently, um, which is OpenAI's agent model, where it will actually do things for you, which is really what we've been waiting for, this next step beyond just chatting, where it will actually go and do things on your behalf, like buy something for you from Amazon or set up an Uber ride for you. And there's like apps that already do these things, but these agentic models will do anything. You don't need a separate app like for each thing you want to do. You can just ask one app to do basically anything, and it's still kind of glitchy and learning and stuff. But just the fact that we are definitely making progress in that arena, and it uses the keyboard and mouse, because they figured out that was the best, most effective way to for it to operate, because that's how humans operate. So that is the world we have built, where we use the keyboard and the mouse to manipulate our computers. And then so that's what these models are doing. And it kind of comes back to the point of these robotics too, why I believe that humanoid robots are the form factor that is by far the most valuable, because that we have adapted the world to a human form. And so that's why the robots, then it's a lot easier for us to train them if they have the same form factor as us. Because some people are saying, well, why do we need to limit these models to like only 2 arms, or so on and so forth? Or but it's just, for one thing, it's easier for us to relate to a robot that looks more like a human. And I mean, I'm sure there will be many other form factors as well for specific things, but in the main, the one that's going to be far the most popular are the ones that are humanoid. Um, but anyway, so right now, this agentic model I was just talking about is only open to pro users, and it costs them like $200 a month. Um, and this is another thing I'll get into, because it kind of relates to like how much people are willing to pay for this stuff. Um, and then Stargate is another huge thing to talk about, that Trump is backing. And it's really good that our president is taking AI seriously, because that is the most, I would say, I believe, but one of the most pressing issues of this time, because so many, pretty much everything else rests on that in one way or another, which I could do a whole video on that, like just philosophically explaining why everything, um, why this overshadows so many other things, even though many other things are very important as well. But AI can affect all of those other things. Um, and so we definitely need to focus on deregulation at this point. I mean, some things, laws are necessary to make sure the models stay aligned to what we want them to be. And but when there's other countries and other people competing, like is happening right now, the most important thing at the moment is deregulation, and like for the president to sign emergency measures and stuff when needed, because things are accelerating at such a rapid pace right now, and the competition is so fierce. Um, and so this Stargate project includes uh, what's his name? The Larry Ellison, I think, from Oracle, and OpenAI, which is of course Sam Altman, and SoftBank. I forget that guy's name, but they're the ones that are heading up this Stargate project, where they're going to spend, at least this was the plan, like hundreds of billions of dollars for the infrastructure that is needed. But now I'm getting to the main topic of what I'll be discussing for the rest of this video, which is something that just happened. I mean, they put their paper out back in December, I think, but I think it was like January 26th, maybe, that this company in China put out this open source model called DeepSeek, and this is all over the internet, so you can easily find out a lot more information. Um, but this is an open source LLM, which means it's free for anyone to use anywhere. Um, and it's somebody called it the Mozart effect, where they're in China, where of course their economy is a lot different from ours, and they have a lot more constraints because they did not have access to like Nvidia's as many Nvidia chips as they wanted. They had a lot more limitations than people in the United States had. So this forced them to come up with a way to um, make do more with less, which is kind of what Mozart did when he was writing all these classical songs. Because back then there were so many constraints on music and what was considered to be real music and what wasn't. And so he had to work within those confines, and that's why he came up with the great compositions and stuff that he did within those confines. And it's kind of like when things open up a little more, like too much, then pretty much anything goes, and people aren't as motivated to be as creative because they um, are the aren't as restrained, so they don't have to do more with less. So that's why it's called the Mozart effect. But basically, this company, um, they say they only used, I forget how many, but far, far, far fewer chips than any other model, and they only spent $5 million, they say, on their model, whereas some of these other models have spent billions of dollars with no end in sight, really. But some people that don't believe that they are that this is true, that they actually are only using this very limited number of chips, because they don't think that's possible, and they think but they can't. This deep seek from China can't admit to using more chips because um, then they because they're not allowed to legally have more chips than that, because of the laws and mandates and stuff that we have here. So they can't like use our chips in that great quantity. So they, unless they got them from like Singapore or somewhere on the gray market, is a term I just heard. Um, but so anyway, then, but they built on what came before, which is what everybody really does. So they used like Chat GPT and these other models, um, and then used synthetic data to keep improving rather than like actual data. The computer just kept generating more and more data artificially that it could keep using to get better and better. And then they also learned how to only use the part of the model that was most relevant for any given task, instead of using the entire model. Um, so they just the model figures out what part needs to be used, and so that very greatly speeds up the process, of course, because it's not running through the entire thing, the data set or whatever. It's just using what it needs, um, and that obviously uses less compute as well. So anyway, it's beating all the benchmarks, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it just has really caused a stir, not just in the AI world, but things are actually starting to become more mainstream knowledge now, which is bound to happen eventually, that people are starting to, maybe this AI really is a thing after all. Um, and because they're starting to realize what a big deal this is and the possible ramifications of it. It just means that we'll be able to go that much faster and accomplish that much more with less, using less energy and less compute, which is a good thing. That's what we've been needing for so long. We've been saying we need to figure out a way to use less compute and less energy, because like we're overpowering the grid, and we just can't make chips fast enough, and now we'll be able to a lot more easily. Um, and so anyway, Trump has called this a Sputnik moment, which if you know your history, that is when Russia basically um, was pulling ahead of us in the space age. And we finally realized, hey, there's another country here that's doing that. We need to step up our game if we want to win be here. And we did end up becoming the first people then to go to the moon, but just barely. I mean, Russia was right behind us, and very could have pulled ahead. Um, and so there's going to be huge advantages though in AI, and which translates to everything else. But for whoever is first, that has huge ramifications, both because of safety reasons and economic and just so much more. I could delve into so much of this, but I'm trying to keep this pretty concise just to give you an overview. But some people have concerns about letting China have all of our data, because people now in the U.S. are madly using this model because it's open source and free for anybody to use. Um, but you can download it to your own device or whatever. So then it would be locally on your phone. It's not like you would be sharing your information or whatever with China in that case. But we also, if as long as we're depending on this model and using this model, that means we have to put up with whatever constraints China has decided to impose on us. Um, like it's not answering certain questions because it's saying that's a political issue and I'm not trained to answer political questions, or whatever else they might decide to do in the future. Like if China ever gets mad at us for whatever reason, like for tariffs or whatever else, you just never know. So that's why we don't want to depend on another country, because we that of all that uncertainty. And they could just choose to stop denying us access to their model at any time, and then just leave us in the lurch, like with the rug pulled out from under us. So that's why it's imperative that we develop our own models that are just as good or better. But some people are saying, well, so what does this mean now for this Stargate project that Trump just okayed, basically, with the Oracle people and the OpenAI and all that, because now, um, but it's Trump says it's still all good. It's just that we probably won't need to spend as much money now as we thought, which is a good thing, and we can do more with less. Um, and so, but some people are wondering, well, what is going to happen with OpenAI now? Maybe they're going to be the next people to go bankrupt, because they have been the leader, but they're not open source, ironically, because they're called OpenAI, and that was the original intent of the company, was to be open, but they're a for-profit company. But now that we don't really need them as much anymore, I mean, people don't need to spend $20 a month for their GPT Pro subscriptions or whatever, because this other model that's free is just as good. Um, and so they'll have to drastically lower their prices now. OpenAI will, and figure out how to stay compelling and relevant and whatnot. So anyway, it's a very interesting drama to follow that is happening in real time, with a lot at stake, and a lot of unknowns as to how this is exactly going to impact us and how to proceed from here. And if it's handled properly, though, it could mean huge wins for everybody. So, with that, I will draw this to a close, and I hope you found this informative. Um, and I will talk to you next time. Bye for now.